What's going on, y'all, and welcome on in. Today, let's do our honest review of Sylvan Sage Vivian, or Sylvian for short. Apologies that this video is coming out so late. I know it's already been almost a week since her release, and normally I try to do these reviews of or showcases of new heroes like the day of or the day after. But Sylvian in particular, I spent a lot of time testing, and I really wanted to gather my thoughts because she's a little bit tricky, and I couldn't really place her. Sometimes matches went well, sometimes it was really hard to figure out how good she was. She has a lot of counters. We'll go over all the strengths and weaknesses in just a second here, and then I'll hopefully guide you guys on whether or not you should pull, skip, or consider what kind of style. And speaking of, guys, the videos, any footage you see, and I'll talk about the build. The build we're going to be talking about today is actually a lifesteal bruiser build, and I'll show a screenshot here in just a second. But I want to show y'all what I was actually working on just a couple minutes ago. I'm actually still testing her as we speak, and I'm going to go into a more faster build, speed tune to go behind a Falcon or Clury before an Amelia, and set up crit damage and utilize souls to play a lot more aggressive, because I think this is a viable build as well. It's not the best gear, something we just slapped on. I need that 250 speed tuning just for my exact comp. Otherwise, we could probably squeeze in more damage or bulk, but I want to try this out in a more aggro style, and I think Sylvan Sage Vivian can work in a lot of different styles. But yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about, you'll see the lifesteal bruiser build, and this will be my honest review of Sylvan Sage Vivian. Alright, y'all, jumping over to this screen here, I have on the left hand side the new build I'll be testing, a much faster, more aggressive build, with Tagahel's book for the souls, and on the right hand side is where most of the testing that I did already, and the gameplay footage you'll be watching is from this side, the right hand side here on this section. So take a look, guys. This is a bruiser build. As you can see, I put the gear back on Milim. It was kind of just taken from her. They share similar stats. Now we went for high attack with a good enough bulk. Some people mentioned that the health might be low. A lot of my chatters in Twitch mentioned, they prefer to have more health. But in my findings, boys, with how the focus works, you just want an overall effective amount of HP. Effective HP, which is a combination of defense and health. You'll find in some matches, higher health will be better. In some matches, defense might be nicer. Overall, health is probably a little bit better, but you do want a balance of both. And in all honesty, the matches that she died, having a reverse of more health and less defense wouldn't really have mattered too much for the most part. If you can, I guess, try out more health than defense, but overall, I didn't really find too much of a difference. The speed, though, is the one thing I would change on this build. I would like to be like maybe about 10, a little bit higher than 10 speed, more around 210-ish, just for some matchups here and there. And the fact that, I do like to cycle her, and it felt like at 199, there was a few matches she felt a little bit slow, but overall, this was just fine too. Right about 200 speed. The crit chance, right, guys, it's about 50% crit chance, joking. But yeah, we got perfectly at 99.8, so 0.2% off, but I like it right there. That means we don't overcap. And then at the crit damage is just fine too. So overall, this is a lifesteal immunity set. This gives her a lot of longevity. You combine with a skill 3 lifesteal back, and she has enough bulk to survive most things. This is a bruiser build, of course, so those of you that want to play a little bit slower, that want to play her, this build obviously can solo, or I shouldn't say obviously, but this build can solo Apocalypse Ravi's, boys, can close out some matches, and I think it's really, really nice to have that sustain, especially combined with her focus and her ramp up feature. So if you give her enough support, she does scale up a lot of damage. It's just getting her there is sometimes proves to be a little bit of a problem. So overall, this is the build. Let's go ahead and now talk about the ins and outs. Skill enhancements, we'll get to artifacts, but let's go ahead and talk about strengths and weaknesses and overall findings. Okay, boys, now that we talked about the stat build, and by the way, ignore the chatty back on this screen, I just put it on to show you guys the overall, right here, the overall bruiser build on the right hand side to see the full stats. This should be Tagahel's. That's what I'm going to be testing on the aggro build, like I mentioned. By the way, let me hide the camera real quick, and I got 2 quick questions for y'all. If you can see here, boys, we did triple S her. Now, I did just have 5 copies of Vivian's lying around. I think I had even more. I think I had 6 or 7 Vivians, plus the one I'm using for Banshee. 2 questions for y'all. 1, if you pull for Sage Vivian, let me know how your luck went. I actually got really lucky here. I didn't one-tap her, but I think I got her in about 40 total summons, so I still have plenty of mystics for the next hero, so I'm pretty excited about that. My main question is, though, I said I had about 6, 7 Vivians. Do you guys have a specific unit that you guys can't draw, that you guys just draw so many copies of? I had those 7 Vivians forever, and so when I heard Sylvan Sage Vivian was coming out, I was really excited. Let me know what you guys, let me know in the comments below, but overall, very, very happy with how things turned out. But let's get back to the actual skills and what made her good and bad simultaneously. I want to go over my full thoughts. That's why it took so long to get this video out there. So let's go through the skills real quick. Nature's Judgment, increased crit damage for the squad, and then you have health gain. When you combine this on the Bruiser build with the Lifesteal, you actually get a lot of health back. There was a few matches where I was like 10-20% health, and we would get, you know, she would be at about 70-80% by the time we skill 3. So the Lifesteal plus the health gain, very nice. A little bit more than I actually thought it would be. The skill 2, the Insight, this is where we have a lot to talk about. This is what makes her unique. Well, part of it, besides the attack scaling and the crit damage up for the squad, right? But the Insight is very nice, but also has a ton of weaknesses, which we're going to cover here very shortly. So you start the battle with 3 focus. You gain 1 whenever, whenever she starts the turn, and then anytime she's hit, if the damage was 25% or more, right, we consume a focus and reduce the damage by a ton, while also reducing the skill cooldown. So speaking of the reduction of cooldown, boys, the Nature's Judgment, I couldn't really tell how good the attack scaling was. There were a few matches where she felt like she did good damage, but by the time you cast your second Nature's Judgment, let alone your third one, the match has probably already been decided, at least if you're on the slow Bruiser build. Just because by the time she cycled back to it, either she has died because of the many weaknesses or just amount of attacks your opponent threw into her, or she stalled long enough to where she may have died, but you won the match regardless. So overall, I wasn't able to figure out, like, it's not like Landy where the damage just starts scaling so fast and Landy protects herself with Guiding Light and things like that. Overall, whenever I casted a second Nature's Judgment, it did do more damage, but it wasn't really like, it was, the match was already over at that point, is what I'm trying to say. The skill 1, real quick, let's talk about it. The speed up was actually super nice. Speed up, I always underrate this, but it felt really good. And I mentioned earlier I want to get her base speed a little higher. That way, you know, after the first skill 3, we can cycle back and get that speed up. If this manages to stay on and doesn't get dispelled, Sylvan Sage Vivian feels really good with her tankiness, her cycling, and then, you know, leading back eventually into the Nature's Judgment where we can close out a match. But let's go back and talk about the Insight, guys, and let's go ahead and talk about the weaknesses of the build. So the reason Insight is a little bit, you know, has issues, let's go ahead and cover the multitude. There's so many weaknesses to this mechanic, boys. So the first thing, and a lot of y'all have probably heard or read about this so far, there are units that can just bypass this completely. Let's cover those 2 first. The units in question are units like Rimu, the Slime, his skill 3, completely, the first part of the damage may get reduced by the 25%, or sorry, the 70% damage reduction after the 25% equivalent if he did enough, but the follow-up damage, the flat damage, the true damage, as a lot of us predicted, just straight up goes through, and so she gets insta-destroyed by Rimu. The second unit like that is a Hawk, guys, and this one a lot of people didn't predict, but it's a Hawk plus his exclusive equipment, the resource reduction. It's a new feature that he got on his EE. He reduces the focus first, so she won't be able to reduce the damage, and then with how, you know, people build her, she gets absolutely cut in half by Zahhak, insta-dead too. So 2 units already that we have to watch out for that can just bypass this Insight mechanic and destroy her. Now let's talk about the few other units, anything that can explode, bombs or burns, in particular burns, because bombs are typically seen on like cleave units, in which case, you know, Sylvan Sage Vivian is going to be kind of in trouble anyways. However, there were a lot of cleave matches we actually did decent in forcing her there. I wouldn't pick her directly into cleave, but as a fun result, she actually didn't do too bad versus some cleave comps just because of how her kit works. She has reach, she has a lot of survivability. But let's get back to the point. Burns and detonations will absolutely destroy her. So units like Carrot and units like Inferno Kawazu will just straight up insta-kill her as well, guys. So that's another, you know, whoever else, there might be some other units, but Kawazu and Carrot are seen quite often, and these units will destroy her too. So we already have like 4 to 5 just absolute hard counters to her kit. Let's go ahead and keep adding some more here. Another super hard counter is, of course, Solitaria. Let me go find her real fast for y'all. Ignore the build, it's kind of just she has just thrown on gear. But the Solitaria, of course, as most of you should know, or if you're newer, your opponent cannot gain any focus. So Sylvan Sage Vivian, her kit, at least her survivability part, will actually get cut completely. Solitaria is actually not the worst matchup because Sylvan Sage Vivian does have some reach. You just need to make sure you survive beyond that. But depending on how things go, depending on what you ban, I actually won a few matches against Solitaria because they thought, you know, her alone was enough, but that is something you need to watch out for. On top of that, boys, we have units with dual attacks. So anyone like Silius and Roz that can just put in a lot of weight of attacks and bring in strong attackers into her will deplete this focus extremely quick. I know she starts the battle with 3 and gains 1 every turn, but boys, trust me on this. If you fight an opponent that has dual attacks, random dual attacks if they're lucky, just a lot of weight of attacks, the focus depletes so fast, and the next hit any decent hit will absolutely destroy her once the focus is at 0, just like Zahak in his EE. So just be careful. She does, some people might consider if she takes a lot of heat, right? If there's that many units, you know, single target attacking into her, that's a good thing in of itself. But it's something you should be aware of, that the focus depletes extremely quickly and then she instantly dies as soon as it's at 0. Beyond that, guys, I think Bellion is kind of like a soft counter, because Bellion in particular doesn't let her skill 1 soul burn, which gives her the reach and the big AoE damage. And on top of that, all the strips and the fact that she counters a ton off of the skill 3 means Bellion is going to both stop the souls and probably strip either speed up, crit damage up, or whatever else buffs you might have ready to go for her. So we already have a ton of hard counters for her kit, guys. Some that just straight up destroy her, some that nullify her entire survivability, excuse me. And then you have just meta units that can just weight of attack her down and just push past that, you know, focus by draining it very, very quickly. So with all that being said, you can't pick her early, and you have to watch out for all the hard counters. And on top of that, you probably don't want to put her in your arena or guild war defense, because she just has so many hard counters. Now, guys, I know that sounds super bad, but I do think she has a lot of promise. I know it sounds bad, but I'm telling you, boys, let's go and pull up the bruiser build, the one, so y'all can refer to it as we talk. It does sound bad, guys, and that's why I'm not going to recommend her to my newer players. So if you're brand new watching this, do not go for Sylvan Sage Vivian. She's very niche. You have to watch out for all those hard counters. You can't put her on any of your defense teams because of those hard counters. And then for real-time arena, you can't pick her early. I tried. I picked her in first spot, and I instantly got carried, Zahawked, whatever it might be. It's too hard to pick her there. Even when you pick her later, your opponent has a chance to bring in a must-ban unit, and that's always kind of annoying. Where you have more solid units, right? Like Apocalypse Ravi, Conqueror Lilius, Hand Guy, Mediator Kowaric, Spectre Tenebria, Archie Mercedes. There's just a lot of units there that have less counters or are a little bit easier to pick for newer players. So let me go ahead and give my recommendation now, and then we'll finish up the skill enhancement and artifact selection for the bruiser build. Guys, newer players, definitely skip, okay? Go for a more solid unit that's more universal, that can be picked a lot easier. And on top of that, she is not easy to gear as well. As y'all saw, I'm on triple S build, and it's still not where I want it exactly. So she's hard to build, hard to play, but she does have promise. So let's talk about the people that may want to pick her up. If you really love her looks, guys, I would recommend getting her. If you have your core established and you have a lot of other stuff, all the other meta ML5s, you know, at least some of them ready to go, that can kind of make the foundation. And then you pick Sylvan Sage Vivian as the later pick that can really help support the team, survive really well, and provide extra reach, or just close out a match with the damage. Like I said, she can solo Apocalypse Ravis on the lifesteal build, which is super nice in this meta. So veterans, I would recommend pick her if you like her looks mainly, because beyond that, let's go ahead and talk about how many playstyles and just how good she is in different areas. So real fast, boys, the Mola is super easy. You really just want a plus 15 her. If you plan to use her, if you put investment in, you know, using mystics or galaxy bookmarks together, just plus 15 her, boys. If you have to skimp, or at least, you know, wait until you can max her out, get the skill 2, get the skill 3, and then get the skill 1 last, as this is definitely the least important. Get the value ones here, but definitely max out the skill 2 and skill 3, okay? Just plus 15 her, though. She's gonna need it. She's gonna want it as this kind of, you know, bruiser all-rounder build. Okay, as for artifact selection, I mentioned the Chatty on the bruiser build, but really, I think you can just kind of use whatever you want. I would really recommend Chatty, and if you don't have this, remember, guys, newer players, you can go to the Book of Memories, and you just have to pay some Sky Stones, but then you have access to triple S-ing this Chatty completely. So a nice 5-star artifact that y'all can get. You just need to, you know, put in the charms to max level it. But I think even on the bruiser build, Dog of Hell's Book is good, and then, of course, for aggressive or cleaver styles, Book is absolutely insane. I'm sure there's other selections, guys. Let me know if you tested anything else. Like, I bet you some people are trying Crown, but overall, if you're bruiser, I really like the Chatty. Of course, there's some matches and units like Solitary that will instantly strip it, but we don't want to be fighting Solis anyways. Unbuffables, of course, are really tough too, but hopefully you brought a cleanser. And I just think the matches that it does work will buy here 1 to 2 turns, or enough turns to sustain, or at least, you know, stall out a little bit longer for you to have your other units clutch out the match. I do think it's very nice. It really synergizes with your kit, and overall, it's the best one that I've found, at least in testing for the bruiser build. Okay, with that being said, let's go ahead and close out the video by talking about you know, let me give some more strengths to her must pull section for those veterans that may want to pick her up, or, you know, that picked her up. And let's talk about different builds. So I mentioned on the left hand side here, we're going to be trying an aggro build. I'll let you guys know the findings, or maybe I'll have to make a separate video on it. But I do know for a fact, I've had fellow streamers already play her in a more aggressive role and say they had a lot of success with that too. So not only can she do a bruiser build to decent success, just have to be very careful with how we pick her and make sure her stats are up to snuff. She can also work in very, very fast comps as cleave. So faster, guys. I would equate my 250 build here as an aggro comp. And then you have players that I know that are cleaving with her at even faster ranges to set up the crit damage for the team. And she also kind of works as a pseudo anchor as well. Anchor meaning she has some survivability, so when your opponent claps back, she can still, you know, survive with her S2 passive. But she can be built for cleave, she can be built for aggro, and then of course on the right hand side, guys, for turn 2 standard, tanky, whatever you might want to call it here. So overall, one more time, new players, try to avoid her unless you absolutely love her. If you love her, guys, go ahead and pull her. You will find matches where she'll be good. And the lower ranks, I don't think everyone will have all the hard counters ready to go, so she can still do a lot of work. The more veteran players that, you know, have their core established, that want to pick her up to add something new to the kit, or if you just like her style, just figure out what kind of playstyle you guys want and then build appropriately, right? For the bruiser build, focus on a lot of effective HP, lifesteal, try to go for chatty, and enjoy Apocalypse Ravi Killer that provides crit damage up. And as long as, you know, you avoid those one-shotters or the massive dual attacks, and Solitaria, she will find a spot. She'll provide a lot of value either through tanking, through the support, or just through the damage and reach, like killing Spectre Tenebrias, especially when you soul burn. Very satisfying. The scaling up, she can close out matches. She feels good in that regard too. And then of course with cleave and aggro, what else do I need to say? She's a mage that provides crit damage up, so we can stack that with attack up and vigor. And yeah, her stat line is pretty nice. So overall, guys, sorry it took so long to make this. She is very hard to use, but I love her looks and I love her kit, and I'm not going to stop trying. So overall, I rate her around maybe Spirit Eye Celine level. She'll probably end up being around that even as things test, but you never know. These new units that come out, like Charlotte coming out this week, I think she'll synergize with a lot of units because of her kit. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this helped you decide one way or another, and I'll catch you guys soon in the next one. Peace out, everybody.